Uh, my name is Brayden, and I'm doing my capstone on Burnout on among game developers. Um, just a little bit about myself. I graduated from Milani High School in 2019. I did about 3 years at Leeward Community College, and I got an associate's in ICS network support and one in general liberal arts. And then I transferred over to UH West Oahu to do creative media with a focus on video game design and development. This is just what I'm going to go over for today. And then my thesis statement is large AAA companies have pushed their employees to follow unsafe work practices of long, strenuous hours. And this has led to developers becoming burnt out from the system. My objective and rationale for my research was just to kind of bring awareness to a growing issue in the industry. Um, we're kind of, because of COVID, just mental health issues have just been on the rise for everyone. And so I just want to bring awareness to one of those issues within one of the game fields or one of the fields that I want to work in. What my research looked at was looking at how burnout affected different areas of the video game industry, from developers themselves to how burnout has affected companies as a whole. And I also researched how different game elements can be used to kind of represent those symptoms of burnout, from like gameplay mechanics and narrative elements. For my capstone, I plan on doing a video game that kind of teaches the user about burnout. We would use different game elements to express those symptoms of burnout and to kind of just to a cautionary tale just so people can prevent themselves from getting into burnout. And that video game can just kind of provide that hands-on experience without the real life risk of going through it. For the significance, burnout has led to lasting mental and physical effects on developers. Developers trying to work through burnout often end up fatigued and exhausted with their bodies giving out on them. In some cases, it's led to depression and just pretty much leaving the industry. Um, for future implications, this is just to avoid burnout. That way, to can provide to prolong the lifespan of working in the video game industry, because it is a very volatile industry. Like, you don't really work that long. For the second significance, the burnout also affects at the games that they make. Game creation has in some way has become an art form, and if the artist isn't healthy, it can also affect the pieces that they create, leading to poor quality games. Um, like in these images here, this is a recent game about 2 years ago, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. There's a lot of like visual effects wrong with this game. And actually afterwards, after the game pretty much released, I think Game Freak announced that they were starting to switch their work schedules that way, because they work under like a 2 year development cycle to produce these Pokemon games. So there's very short times in between game development for Pokemon. And then for the data I looked at, is there's very high levels of people feeling burnt out among the United States in general, and about and in the last year, about 26% felt often or always burnt out from work. So that's about 1 in 4 people feeling burnt out in all the US. My target audience is those who wants to work or is working in the video game industry, as well as the higher management for video game companies so that they can kind of just change the work culture that they've been pushing on people. My proposed solution will provide myself and others alike trying to get into the video game industry with like a warning sign about a growing issue. It would serve as a way to players to experience burnout without getting the real life effects. And it would be a way for them to learn to take care of themselves, and prevent burnout or how to care for themselves if they are suffering from burnout. My solution, it would also advocate for higher management from video game companies to just implement changes in the work culture so that way they can improve the mental health of their workers. For my project, the pre-production is just going to be researching burnout, and then I start and then just planning out the narrative for the game. And then I also started trying to plan out the kind of game mechanics that I want to use to mimic those burnout symptoms. For production, it's just going to be building and coding the game, creating assets, um, and just finalizing the plans for those like game mechanics. For post production, it's just going to be play testing for bugs and making sure the game works, and then releasing it later to the public. For my deliverable, the video game is going to be using gameplay and narrative elements to illustrate burnout. So the game I was planning, it was going to be like a platform style game, kind of in the style of the older Mario classic games. And the main plot is going to be following a young game developer newly entering a large company, trying to work their way to the top. But slowly, as they work through, they kind of just lose their sense of self and passion. For the level design, it was going to be based around like the workplace using kind of common objects like computers and desks and drawing tablets as the main platforms. And I wanted to work with the color design a little bit. So I wanted it to start off bright and colorful to show them like being young and hopeful in the industry. But then as they slowly work through the levels, it's going to start shifting towards black and white to kind of show that loss of self and passion for the industry. For the game mechanics, I also wanted to make use of slowing down the character, kind of just to show that weight on the person and the stress. Create that lot. I'm sorry, to create that feeling of loss of energy and making it simple tasks hard to complete. Towards the end, I wanted it to have like a figure just come to the player to help them just get out of burnout to kind of symbolize that helping hand being like upper management to change the work culture to help their employees. And that's it.